And welcome back to the last what if of the day, which is the only what if, but I've been pre-recording the last 3 videos. This one comes from Carl Williams, who asked the question, what if Rodan, Mothra, Ghidorah, and Godzilla, what if the Monsterverse versions of these characters were in the MCU? Now, this is an interesting idea because we don't deal with the concept of giant monsters in the MCU very often. Normally, it's a supervillain of some kind, usually a reflection of the hero. But the idea is like, okay, what if these creatures didn't? So let's actually just take the events of Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and obviously Kong versus Godzilla when that comes out. Allegedly, the trailer's coming out on Sunday. You better be sure I'm hyped for that. I might even try to attempt to do a trailer reaction. I can't guarantee it. I do have that day off, so who knows? But let's just assume that those events take place in the MCU. So if they take place in the MCU, how exactly, what's the best way to put it? If they take place in the MCU, that, 1 second, got hiccups. We're good. If they take an MCU, first off, how would they change being in the MCU, and how does them being in the MCU affect the MCU? So, to answer that, we have to look at when each of those take place, look at the corresponding films in the MCU lineup, and see if there's any bearing to the overall MCU. We won't really count Kong in this because Kong is very separated time-wise and location-wise. But with Godzilla, obviously it's televised. Godzilla comes out, the Mutos come up. It takes place in 2014, assuming that we're going by the year the movie's released. At that time, the only movies that come out at that point are Winter Soldier, around that. And if we're looking by years, assuming the years translate properly into the MCU timeline, with some exceptions, like Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, obviously is different. We know Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 takes place like a couple months after the first one, despite the fact it came out, I believe, in 2017. So take those a few examples out of the way. So we know that Iron Man 3 was around 2013. Captain America, so we know Captain America takes place around this time. And we know that Guardians of the Galaxy takes place around this time. Those are like your big ones. Guardians doesn't have any bearing on this whatsoever. Captain America, and the fact that Iron Man's around doing his thing, and Thor, as far as we know, is still around at this point. Banner's still around. Those guys are still doing their thing. When the Mutos show up, nothing major has happened at that point. I mean, yes, the Mutos are flying around and all that, but they really didn't become a big prevalent issue until they actually hit the mainland and hit Hawaii. And that's when people are like, oh my god, the Mutos, oh my god. So, obviously Godzilla goes after the Mutos in Hawaii. But I imagine Iron Man or Thor would honestly be getting in the way almost immediately to try to take these things on, because they're wreaking havoc, all that. The Avengers do exist at this point. Cap, maybe even Cap is getting involved. This could take, I can't remember when Godzilla come out before or after Captain America Winter Soldier. That's actually a really good question. Godzilla 2019 or 14, 14. So 2014. What was the release date for that? Because I believe Captain America was in April. This one came out in May. So yeah, Captain America has actually already happened at this point. So the Avengers because we know the Avengers were taking out like Hydra bases and stuff. So they were doing their thing. So they would probably go straight for the Mutos to try to take them on, which now is turning this into a bit of a who would win, because who would win, the Mutos or the Avengers? The Mutos we know were feeding off radiation, were highly durable, highly powerful creatures. That's not even taking into consideration when we get to the other Titans. So I don't believe, first off, Cap and like all the human characters are only going to be able to really help with evacuation. Iron Man's the only one out of them who could really do anything. Thor and Hulk are the two heavy hitters. The Mutos Hulk would probably be the one who's really hammering on the Mutos, but they bat Hulk around. Thor strikes them with thunder, but the Mutos ultimately use an EMP, knock Iron Man's suit out of the sky, because there's nothing that says his suit is immune to an EMP, at least in the Marvel MCU. So Thor and Hulk are the ones that are really trying to take both these things on. Keep in mind, too, there was actually only one. The flying one was the only one in Hawaii. So they're having to deal with the airborne nature of the Muto, which means Thor's the only one who's really able to deal with it on a regular basis. The female wakes up in Area 51, basically. Meanwhile, Godzilla finally shows up. So as they're still fighting the Muto, because they never fought anything the level of the Mutos in the MCU. Thor has fought things the level of the Mutos in the MCU. And to be fair, some of the things on the levels of the size-wise, he could not beat on his own. Like, he actually couldn't beat the dragon on his own. Otherwise, he would have beaten him. I mean, I think that anyway. If he could have beaten the dragon, he would have beaten the dragon, and then he would have just called for Helmdall. But I think one of the reasons he got out of it is because he didn't want to fight the dragon at that point, and B, it wasn't something he was immediately prepared to beat. But Surtur, for instance, is definitely kaiju size, and Thor could not beat Surtur. But then again, Surtur is much more powerful than I think the kaijus are. Still, they're struggling, and as they're struggling, Hulk, getting back up for another round. All of a sudden, you hear the footsteps, and because they can't pay attention to both these giant monsters. It's easy to not pay attention to Godzilla while paying attention to a Muto. Hulk and Thor certainly are, but the others who are grounded see Godzilla show up, and Godzilla just comes in and just takes on the Muto, who is injured at this point, who isn't just fresh from the fight, ready to go, and flies away just as Godzilla came. No, this thing's probably injured. This thing might even be grounded, but that doesn't mean it's easy to take down. Godzilla, though, is able to take this thing down thanks to them actually injuring it, and Hulk and Thor actually kind of hang back. The Hulk needs to be held back to hang back. And it's like, big monster! No, don't Hulk, don't! So there's something different. There's one other way to take out the other one. And they don't immediately go after Godzilla. Godzilla then, goes back into the ocean and does his thing. Goes after the female Muto, who's, trying to attract the male, who is not there. It's like, why isn't the male there? They go try to take on the female, which is much larger. Godzilla once again shows up. And basically they say, all right, fine. Well, let's hang back. Hulk is like, big monster, no. It's like, Hulk, no. And Hulk just wants to attack the big monster. And ultimately Godzilla is able to beat the female Muto without, without being tag teamed by the male. So now the question comes in the MCU. You have to deal with the Monarch side of things. You have to deal with the MCU side of things. The Avengers are also tasked with are part of Monarch, I imagine. Like, they work with Monarch to monitor Godzilla and other kaijus. So they've been keeping an eye on this thing. Banner is very interested in studying as well because radiation is a big part of the Hulk, and they are radioactive beings. Wondering if, maybe it's a way to deal with the Hulk or whatever. Then you get into the events of the Godzilla King of the Monsters, where Ghidorah eventually does get woken up. Because basically the monsters are kept in check. Godzilla's cool. There hasn't been many other things going on, but the monsters are released. Now remember, Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019. I would imagine because that's when Endgame took place. And I believe it came out after Endgame, if I'm not mistaken. You could make an argument this is after the events of Endgame, where because Godzilla maybe survived the snap. I can see that happening. Like, there's only one of them. There was no reason to split things in half. Godzilla. Sorry, I lost track of what I was saying there. Back on it. After Endgame, so Tony's dead. Cap's an old man. A lot of the Avengers are kind of disbanded. Vision's dead. Or is he? WandaVision. We started watching that, by the way. We're loving it. We're watching the third episode tomorrow, and then I'll start doing reviews of each episode, just because it took me a little while to get to the 2 episodes, and the third one's tomorrow, and I know those ones had already been shown to special people who got a sneak peek. So I'm just going to do a 3 episode review in one. But anyway, so the question is, how does, in a post-Endgame world, the whole Godzilla King of the Monsters thing affect the MCU? First off, hard to say because we don't know where the MCU is really going at this moment. But we can say that nothing really happens until Ghidorah wakes up. When Ghidorah wakes up, and, Banner is getting the scanner that something's way off. All the remaining Avengers. We don't know where Captain Marvel is, by the way. We assume Captain Marvel is out in the cosmos again. Guardians, we know, are out. Thor's gone. So we have the problem of, is there any Avengers left to take on Ghidorah and, aid Godzilla? Because they've turned Godzilla is probably benevolent at this point. They probably don't bother Godzilla as long as Godzilla doesn't do anything out of the ordinary, and that's just what's going on. So you have Hulk, who is still, it's Professor Hulk, but he'd still be strong enough to, do something. But only if he, has no choice. Rhodey's still around. Falcon's still around. Bucky's still around. Spider-Man's still around. Wanda is still around. And Wanda would be a very big contender to possibly be doing something. The problem is Ghidorah is not going to be messing around. Like, Ghidorah is less messing around than even Thanos is. Thanos at least exchanged verbal banter with you. Ghidorah's just like, I'm either going to roast you, eat you, squish you, or some combination of the three. So when Godzilla gets taken out by the Oxygen Destroyer and Ghidorah is doing his thing, it's the Avengers try their best to, take on Ghidorah, but the Avengers, as they are at that point, there's not much they can do. I think Wanda might actually be too despondent to really do much against Ghidorah right now, as we saw her at the end of Endgame. So ultimately, it's going to be, them getting Godzilla back up. Banner might, in fact, Banner would actually, I didn't even consider this until just now. Banner could actually take the place of Hirasawa in delivering the nuke that saves Godzilla, because he's the Hulk. He can take that. So, he delivers it. He still needs to breathe, but he knows it's hard to breathe, but he still does it. And, he saves Godzilla. He makes it out. And he's able, and the gamma actually does help restore him a little bit, but I imagine we might put him a little off kilter, so the Hulk-esque personality is coming back out a little bit. Godzilla comes back up, Hulk swims to the surface. Hulk and Godzilla actually look at each other, and Hulk's just looking like, yeah, not your irony, big guy. I get it. You want to be left alone, but you got your job to do. I get it, man. And Godzilla again gives him that look and just swims off, and then the fight goes down about the same. The problem here is that in the MCU, the people, if we're going by the time frame these happen in, when these creatures wake up, there's the characters who could actually make a big difference in the story are off-world and therefore can't help or are dead. So the MCU ultimately, it'd be an interesting thing to watch the Avengers fight, like the Mutos and the Titans, things along those lines. But I don't think there would be that big of a change ultimately. A couple of them might even get dusted in the snap. Who knows? But that's my thought on what if the Monsterverse monsters, Titans, were in the MCU. What do you think? Do you think it'd be completely different? Or do you think it would be something along what I'm saying? There would be some changes. There'd get some cool moments, but it doesn't ultimately affect the long-term story of the MCU. Put in the comments below, let me know. But until then, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, who wants to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know, we'll do a review of it at some point. And ideas for who would win, Star Wars, Superman, Magic, what if, anything I do on the channel. Put that in the comments below. Let me know. I'll get to that at some point. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. I will see you folks on Saturday for the last of the Pokemon My Hero Academia crossover what if. See you later, folks.